Hey everyone, if you're passionate about improving and leveling up your gameplay, I've been offering coaching classes for 5 days a week for quite some time, and just seen firsthand how much my students have been improving across all different elo brackets. How it works is you'll come to a class with a VOD you like reviewed, and I'm going to help you with your early game, your mid game, or anything you feel like needs improving. And if you're unsure, then I'm going to steer you in the right direction by setting clear learning objectives. Link's going to be in the description, I hope to see you there, but if not, then enjoy the video. Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be covering communication in solo queue. We're going to be going through not just the most important pieces of information you need to be communicating, but also the most effective ways to do so. So if you feel like in solo queue it's really hard for you to get your teammates to listen and get on the same page, then this guide is definitely going to help you out. And I'm not going to say by the end of this guide they're going to listen to you every single time and be on the same page every game, but it's definitely going to increase your odds if you're communicating in the right way, and this guide is definitely going to help you be able to do that. Our first topic is going to be early game communication, and I'm going to be putting some solo queue clips in the background, so for all those zoomers out there, hopefully it helps you stay focused. And the first point you desperately need to be communicating is giving your jungler options. You need to be communicating to your jungler the windows in where he can gank and play for a kill. Now, quite a few top laners do ping for ganks, of course, but very rarely, I'd say less than 1% of the time, are those top laners communicating that gank window ahead of time. If you take a really, fight to the death with your opponent, you're both low HP, and you start spam pinging for a gank, that's not going to give you a high chance of your jungler to actually come. Where if you crash wave 3 and the wave is bouncing back to you and you're pinging where the wave is going to be in 1 minute and you're letting your jungler know that, he can plan his path around it. So maybe he's looking mid and he is thinking about that gank, but he knows that you've pinged for a gank 1 minute early, then he's going to weigh that up and he's going to take that top gank if it looks free. So if you're winning your trades, you're pinging those ganks ahead of time, the chance he actually comes top and gets yourself a kill or even himself a kill is going to be significantly higher. Where if you're fighting to the death and you start pinging desperately for a jungler to come, and he's already decided that he's going to play for bot crab, or he's already started his wolves or his gromp, you know your jungler is not going to stop his gromp to come help you top. Very rarely will they actually do that. Once they've decided on doing something, they're going to commit to that. But if you ping ahead of time, the chance that they, use your call and actually come to that play is going to be significantly higher than if you're just calling them on the fly. And touching on that point, one thing I strongly advise not communicating is asking for a gank or some resources at a timer where it has a very low chance of success. So even if your wave is coming to a good spot, but you're up against a full HP Renekton with ulti, and he's playing very passive, probably don't ask for a gank. Your Graves or your Kindred, Lee Sin doesn't matter, is probably not going to be able to kill that Renekton, depending on, how he's playing. So you really need to see not just the matchup, how volatile it is, but also how your opponent is playing. So if, you're playing Jax vs Fiora, the Fiora is trading really heavily, constantly poking you down and fighting a lot, then of course, and the wave is coming back to you, call up your jungler in 1 minute in advance. The chance that leads to a kill is very high, but if your opponent's sitting far back and just Dr. Mundo queuing and just farming waves like that, you don't really need to ask for a gank, you're getting a lead regardless, and also the chance of that gank working is very low. So it's not going to be worth it. So if your opponent's staying full HP, they have a lot of tools to survive, depending on who they're playing up against, top jungle, then don't really waste your jungler's time because it's really detrimental for the game. Now, because your jungler's time is so valuable, you don't really want to be pinging and communicating and asking him to come top at a timer that's not playing for a kill. You don't want to be calling him to push out your wave for you when you're in a bad spot if you lost lane by yourself. You want to be using your jungler to attack, not to defend. Now, the exception to this rule is using your jungler as a counter gank tool is extremely valuable for the game if you are very confident you're going to win 2v2. If you lose anyway through a counter gank, then just accept the small loss by yourself, but if you feel quite confident that you'll win that 2v2, then call your jungler up for that counter gank. You can do so by assist pinging top and then pinging the enemy jungler's portrait to let your jungler know that you're thinking about the enemy jungler coming top and you want him to defend you. Because if you can win that 2v2, that is the most pressuring thing you can do in the early game as a top laner. Of course, there are some exceptions, if you're playing Pantheon or Shen, or you TP, something like that, but most of the time, top lane can't get that involved in the game. But if your jungler comes top, and you kill not only your opponent, but, waste the enemy jungler's time, or chunk him or kill him as well, then you're going to be involved in the game in that way. So using communication for counter ganks is going to be really important for your jungler, and do that ahead of time. Don't ping as the enemy jungler is coming in and you're getting killed already. Ping it as they're coming. And you can sort of get a feel for when you're going to get ganked if your wave's in a bad spot, or if you're playing really aggressive and you need to get a wave in. And if your jungler's on your side of the map, let them know you want them to come top for the counter gank. And if you can pull that off, then your chance of winning that game is going to be extremely high. Now, as for early game communication as a whole, I've simplified it into 2 main categories that you should be communicating. The first one is, of course, communicating your jungler the options, which we just touched on, and the second is tagging your opponent and communicating their options. Everyone in the game should be responsible at a bare minimum for communicating what their opponent is doing. Now, you've probably experienced some frustration when your mid lane doesn't ping missing and you get ganked by the mid, same with support, and of course they can feel that same frustration for you. The problem is most people in League, they do the bare minimum. So if your opponent leaves and, he could be hitting mid, but you just drop a missing ping or two top, that's not really going to be your highest chance of communicating that clearly. You've probably even experienced it yourself, where the enemy Talon, let's say for example, leaves mid, and your mid laner drops one missing ping mid, and you still die to the gank, because that's not a very urgent ping, it's a very passive ping. You want to be communicating their option, so you need to be back pinging on your mid laner, or you need to be pinging enemy missing top, and the route here is going to mid, and then finishing that with a back ping on your mid laner. Give the options that your top laner can do. If you can run to the jungle, you can drop, be careful on your jungler and the route that the enemy top is going, and especially if the enemy top laner is playing unique champions with unique options, so champs like Shen, champs like Pantheon, champs like Sion, they have a great opportunity when they base to just run mid or run bottom and ult out of base, so you need to be back ping, their most likely option, and ping in your lane opponent's ulti and letting them know, watch out, Shen has ulti, Pantheon's ulti, and this is his option. You can't just see, oh, Shen's level 6, ping at once, and hope your team's going to respect that. Because no one's going to play respectful the entire game of League of Legends just because you're versing a Shen or a Pantheon or something like that. So you need to be communicating those options very clearly in advance, backpinging your, specifically the option your top laner can do, and letting your team know and giving them the highest chance to survive your enemy top laner's options. Now, other than these two main points, there is one more thing you can be communicating, but I would recommend staying away from it unless you're exceptionally good at communicating the top lane options in advance for your jungler, and also tracking your opponent's options perfectly, but I've almost never met anyone that can do that, so I would recommend highly tunneling and working on those two main points. But if you're already doing them quite well, you can look to go above and beyond and track the enemy jungler or enemy roams. So I'd say tracking enemy mid and support roams is very difficult for a top laner. You can do it and let your team know their options, exactly the same as if top laner is roaming mid. You can communicate to your bot lane that mid's roaming down, but I'd say one thing that you can do that's a bit consistent is tracking the enemy jungler. If you realize your opponent leashes, or you see the enemy jungler on a ward that you got level 1, or they're just playing a champion that's probably going to start red, like a Lee Sin or a Rek'Sai, and you know that because you watch educational content, and a lot of your teammates don't, you can just communicate bot, like backping. If they're playing aggressive around 3 minutes or 240, when it's likely that the enemy jungler is going to go bot. So you can let your team know. You don't have to track the jungler the whole game, but the first path is very easy, because if you know they're going to start red or your top laner leashes, then you can just backping your bot lane around the time where you feel like jungler will come. If your bot lane is playing very aggressive, or you can assist ping the river and ping your trinket, let them know towards stuff like that. But again, I would stay away from this and just focus purely on letting your jungler know options ahead of time, and also tracking your opponent's every move and the options they have in the game. Now, I have a couple examples here of using communication to snowball in the early game ahead of time. And in this game, I'm not going to show the matchup too much. I'm playing Jax up against a Z1 trick. So of course he's playing Z. But you're going to see my ping comes very shortly. So I'll skip ahead a little bit. The matchup does not matter at all. And you can see really shortly, I'm going to ping for an assist me gank right now. Boom. I'm pinging assist me right here because this is where the wave is going to be in the next 45 to 60 seconds. So Ivern has time to have a base come top, finish his crab come top, and be ready for this timer. Also, it's a no flash Z. The gank chance is really high, but also my gameplay is related to the ping as well. So normally I would not trade on this timer because he's level 4, but I want to make him low HP. Now, granted, I didn't know the Jax Z matchup, surprise, surprise, and he does a lot more damage than I expected. I thought I would get low, but not this low, but you can see I got him to half HP. So exactly what I wanted. I got a bit lower than expected, but I wanted to chunk him, base and TP, and play purely for this gank that I've communicated. So now, it's a half HP Z with no flash, wave coming back, and Ivern, when he saw my ping, he moved his screen top, most junglers will, and he sees an opportunity, so I TP back, and now the Z just has nothing to do, right? The wave is stuck here, either he's going to die to this gank, or he's going to, respect a bunch of the XP and waves and get behind regardless. So you can see I received my gank around 412, 415. I pinged it around 50 seconds earlier, 45, and I gave my Ivern that opportunity. There's a really good chance that Ivern may be stuck around bot, wasted time, or base or something like that, and didn't make this time if I did not communicate that in advance and give him that opportunity to look and see that there's going to be a free kill for him in the next 45 to 1 minute. As for our second example, it's mainly going to be built around the counter gank communication we talked about. So in this game, playing Renekton, Darius up against Renekton, we both have Ignite. Very volatile matchup. So look at the chat right now. Our Echo pinged, watch out, Lee Sin is topside, cautious, cautious. And instead of me, going, alright, that's all good, and thumbs upping him, I said, no, come here then. I want you to come and counter gank this play. I don't want you to gank this 0-1 Renekton with a D shield, I don't want to waste your time, but a counter gank is good. Now, my gameplay didn't reflect my communication. I played too aggressive here, and Lee Sin was able to come earlier. I misjudged the timing, and he was able to burn my flash. I tried to bring him into the tower with flash, so he took a bit of damage, so it was okay, but you can see if I just respected 10 extra seconds, and then played aggressive and let Lee Sin gank me, and Echo was here in time, we would have been able to stomp this 2v2. But the play doesn't end here, even though we couldn't get this one off, because Lee Sin is top, and he sees Darius has to get this wave out in base, or his lane is over, in this volatile matchup, I know Lee Sin is still looking top. So I'm trying to push this wave urgently, I'm going to skip the laning section, we only care about comms in this video, but you can see Lee Sin is chasing the Echo around. So I'm using that as free time to get my wave in. You can see I dropped another assist ping a little bit earlier. I want you here for this counter gank, and Echo's responding. He's coming top now, and I'm trying my best to get this wave in, but I know it's a Korean Lee Sin. He's not letting me get this wave in without a fight, so I'm pulling him up here. So I'm running around the alcove, trying to bait time, create some time. So now my gameplay is reflecting my call. I called for a counter gank, and I'm playing purely to bait them in and waste time, and now we're able to get it off. So great W by Echo. We're able to, good flashes by them actually, and we're able to win the 2v2 because of course our champions are stronger. I'm Sword, Ruby, D-Blade versus D-Shield Renekton. I think I killed him level 1 or 2 or something, and now we're able to stomp the 2v2. So you see me pinging the Echo, giving him a fist bump, because I know I called this counter gank, he was really involved in the game, and we're able to snowball the early game really heavily, based purely from our communication. Moving on to the mid-game communication. Now at the highest level of League, the mid-game macro and the communication surrounding it can be quite complicated at times because there are just so many variables you need to keep track of. So to simplify the communication, I've broken it down into 3 main categories that can help you improve on this. Now the first one is of course going to be call your intention ahead of time. It doesn't matter what you're doing in the game, even if you're making the wrong play, you need to be calling your intention ahead of time. If you're planning to split push top tower and you don't want to fight this dragon, let your team know as you're leaving the base. Let your team know back ping dragon, ping on your way to top tower, exactly what you're doing so they can use that information to decide if they want to fight it or not. Now the same of course happens for the reverse. It's even more important for the reverse. If you're planning to arrive at this dragon fight but you need to fix top wave first, or you want to push it down and create pressure, you need to let your team know that. You need to be pinging on your way to dragon when it's 1 minute off spawn, getting your pressure timed up and arriving to that fight on time, because if you don't, there's a much higher chance your team fights without you because they don't know if you're coming or not. But if they know you're coming, you've pinged that in advance, then there's a really good chance that they play around that. And that's not always going to happen, of course, and it's good to be flexible in League, but letting your team know in advance is the highest chance you have of making that play more successful. Now, calling your intention ahead of time also applies to our second point, and that is calling off plays. It's really important in the mid-game that you call off a play ahead of time. And most of the time, a fight or your team making a play is going to be quite telegraphed, where if Dragon is spawning in 1 minute, there's a very good chance your team is going to fight that. Because most of the other roles in the game, they don't have the luxury of playing strong bruises and being able to win the game through side, play for solo kills on side lane, play for pushing and grouping, stuff like that. Most of the time, the AD carry catches mid, the support in the jungle gets vision around Dragon or whatever, Baron, whatever object is spawning, and mid just catches waves and groups up on a control mage champ. So most of the other roles want to be playing just a team fight. It does depend on their champ, of course, but most of their champions are going to be grouping and fighting at the next spawn objective. So it's very clear for you, Dragon spawning in 1 minute, my team probably wants to fight it. You need to know if you actually want to fight that or not. And if you don't, if you feel like yet again your bot lane got rolled too hard, they have a 2-item Xayah, nothing you can do. You just need to be back pinging your team like crazy. Not your team, but the objective 1 minute before it spawns, and letting your team know you have no intention to fight it. Now, they might still choose to fight it without you, but the chance that they go there and get aced is much lower if you let them know beforehand, where if you try to back ping them off Dragon when they already arrive and they already grouped up to fight, they are most likely going to fight. Just like the jungler doing Gromp, they're not going to stop a play they've already committed to. But if you let them know 1 minute in advance, we're giving this dragon, I really don't want to fight it, then maybe they come onto your side, they help you break tower, maybe they dive your opponent with you, and you can actually get a play on the other side of the map. And for our final point, this one also connects to the previous point, they all work quite well together. If you're planning to split push a tower instead of finding the objective, you also need to let your team know that. You want to be pinging to give something and take something. There's a great rule for you to follow in terms of your communication structure. No matter what you do, it has to be in advance. So every single time you're leaving base, you need to be calling what you're giving and what you're taking. I want to be giving this dragon, I want to be taking this tower, I want to give Herald and play for dragon, whatever it may be, you need to let your team know. Sometimes there's no objective, no tower you can take, but you still don't want to fight Dragon because your pot lane's doing terribly, give Dragon play for top camps. You want to be playing for something on the other side if you're playing for it, or if you do want to play for that objective, let your team know, I'm playing for this objective, and don't worry about top. Maybe your jungler was pathing towards top to, gank your side, but you're only going top to create pressure for that Dragon. Backping your jungler away, assist ping the Dragon. You really need to be letting your team know what you don't want to do and what you want to do 1 minute in advance if you can. So I have an example here of communicating my intention in advance. So in this game, my game plan was, I'm really fed on Camille, I want to speed up the game and get Baron, I'm a strong side laning champion with good engage on mid, I want to create pressure, make somebody respond, and look for a gank on mid. Now of course I'm not going to type a whole essay where two people have chat off anyway, so I'm going to be communicating in pings in a very simple way. So here, I made Akali respond to me, which was great. I'm going to be looking mid. There's no opportunity right now. You can see nothing's happening on the map. So I'm going to try again in one more wave. So I fog up a little bit just in case. And now I'm going to be going back bot very shortly. High chance, here it is. And then I'm going to be looking to make the exact same play again. So I didn't ping on my way this time because the play didn't look good. Didn't look like anything was happening. And I didn't want Samira to stop her recall. So I let my AD carry base. One shot this wave, and I know Akali's still bot, so now I'm heading straight mid. I'm going to call on my way very shortly, and you can see I actually should have called it about 5-7 seconds earlier. I'm calling on my way, and look at the map. So the Sejuani, he actually does a miracle for a jungler. He skips his red, and Yone actually comes straight here as well. I'm pinging on my way. I really want to get involved. You can see my pings, 5 pings now. I really want to force on this timer. Akali's answering bot. We can stomp this fight right now. So boom, able to take out the Sona. My team all gets involved because I communicated early. I guarantee you if I pinged 10 seconds later even, the Sejuani would have started red, and then he of course has to finish it because he's a jungler, and there's a good chance Yone goes top as well. So you can see the small difference, 5 or 10 seconds can make in terms of your communication, and even in that timer, I should have communicated 5 seconds earlier, but it was still fast enough that my teammates decided, okay, I can follow his play now, because they haven't already committed to their own play. Moving on to using chat to shot call. And I'm going to be completely honest, I'm not a fan of anyone trying to use chat to shot call as you're making it way more complicated than it needs to be. You can make your intention very clear just from pings alone, and if you have your chat enabled, not only are you going to see all that random bullshit that your teammates type, when they're feeling frustrated, but also you're going to be placing the expectation on your teammates. If you type something, some players might not even see your message. A lot of Modern League players now, they play without chat enabled, so maybe your jungle and AD carry see what you say, and mid support don't. How can you be on the same page when you don't even know if they're going to see your message or not? And even if they do, you don't know if they're going to follow it. Where with the ping system, everyone has pings enabled. There might be some full muters, especially when people are smurfing. They full mute because they know what to do, better than their teammates. But generally, everyone is going to see your pings unless you're, being tilted and back pinging people, stuff like that. They're not going to mute your pings unless you're abusing it. So as long as you're being a good citizen on the Rift, they're going to see your shot call with your pings, and that's all you need. As long as you are calling what we talked about earlier, your play in advance, what you don't want to do, what you want to do with pings, that is going to be enough. And you can't be creative with it. You might be thinking, what if I want TP flank ward, stuff like that? You can ping exactly where you want your wards, assist me, and then ping, a warding trinket, stuff like that. You can be creative with your use of pings to get your message across, and pretty much everything you need to communicate in the game, I shouldn't say everything, but over 99% of the things you need to comm, you can do so with the ping system, and it's not really worth having chat on for that 1% because you don't even know if your team is going to hear it anyway. So I strongly recommend just becoming really good at the ping system, turning that chat off and focusing purely on your gameplay. You'll almost never see a high-ranking challenger player shot calling the whole game with chat. It's not going to happen. They can do exactly what they need with pings alone. Now, there will be exceptions. Sometimes they might type something, sneak Baron at 20, but most of the time, most of the calls they're doing are going to be through pings alone, and you especially see it with the high-end players, top 10 challenger, Chovy, stuff like that. They're not going to use chat at all. They don't need to. They can get rank 1 2k LP without it, so there's no reason why you need to be using it, because it's just going to be distracting you. Of course, what your teammates are saying, but also you placing the expectation on them. What you type can be very frustrating as well and can cause you to tilt. I've actually had a couple of students where they've done that exact same thing. They've taken some lessons, their mid-game knowledge has improved, so they're trying to shot call more, but they're doing it in the wrong way. They're trying to type to their team what to do, and then they just expect their team to follow it, which can cause them to tilt or make a misplay in the game because they just expect their team to follow them. Now, we're going to be finishing up with the top 5 things to communicate just to make your process even simpler. And the first one is of course going to be communicating your gank windows ahead of time. If you can be a consistent way for your jungler to get fed and he knows that 1 minute in advance, you're going to win a lot more games. if you're playing your lane well, if your wave is in a great spot and you're letting your jungler know that spot 1 minute early, more often than not they are going to come and use that opportunity, unless there's a better one, right? If they're double killing bot or making a great play bot, we can't complain, but even if they make the wrong play and they miss out, not the end of the world. If you're doing it consistently, it's going to benefit you a lot in the long run. Now the second one is tracking your opponent. You need to be giving your team as much notice as you can with their windows, especially if they're playing champions with a lot of threat. So if you have champs like Malphite, champs like Camille, and they're ganking mid, you need to let your team know really far in advance. If your mid lane has already jumped in on Tristan and he's fighting, and then you start backpinging because you feel like Camille's almost there, and she just arrives, of course your mid is going to die. You need to let your team know the second your opponent moves, and he's looking to do anything, and especially if they're basing, and they're playing champs with TP options, or they're playing champs like Shen or Malphite, you need to really be letting your team know how much threat they have and the most likely avenue in which they're going to be going. Now, the next one is, of course, relates to the mid game, giving this objective. I did recommend the process of give this and take this. So let's give Dragon, let's play for top, let's give Herald, play for Dragon, stuff like that. But giving the objective is really important for you, especially if you're playing strong side laning champs. If you're playing a champ like Fiora or Yorick, and you're just in side lane most of the time anyway, you need to become really good at pinging your team to give. Because nothing feels worse than you're trying to play for a tier 2, and your team gets completely wiped at Dragon fighting, but from their point of view, they wanted to fight Dragon, they had no idea if you're coming or not. And it may seem obvious to you, as the split pusher, as the Fiora player, that you don't actually want to come, but for them, they're just trying to do their role. Most of the time, their role is going to be fighting, grouping up and team fighting, so you need to really let them know if you don't want to fight an objective before they've already committed all their vision and their time, and they're ready to fight it. Now, the fourth one is, of course, I am playing for this, so I want to give Dragon, I want to play for top. They go pretty hand in hand, but that's also going to be good if you're coming out onto the map and you're pinging tier 2, even if you forget to backping Dragon, your team's still going to have a better idea of what you're doing. So they can play around that as well. They can use that information well. And again, they're not always going to use your information to the best of their ability. So it's really important for you not to tunnel on, oh, my jungler or my teammate didn't listen to my call this time, I'm not going to call again. If you do it consistently over 100 games, regardless of elo bracket, it's going to benefit you a lot in the long run. And the final point, pinging major cooldowns. We didn't really touch on this much in the guide, I didn't think it needed its own section, but if you can become really good at timing flashes, TPs, ultis, stuff like that, you don't have to type it out in chat, but just pinging it straight away, that is really useful information for your team to use, especially if they're playing champs with Engage. So if your support's on Leona, Jungle Zac, whatever it may be, if you're spam pinging, Kai'Sa no flash, mid no flash, stuff like that, it gives your team a lot more information to work with, especially in the early game. If you burn your opponent's flash, don't just ping it once and you just think, oh, my jungler knows now, he can use that information. Ping it multiple times, especially when your jungler is top. If you can ping, my opponent has no flash, ping it twice, and then assist ping me where the wave is going to be coming, the chance they come is significantly higher than if you just ping your opponent, or if you pinged the flash 3 minutes ago. You need to be pinging very clearly, here's no flash, the wave is going to be here, we can look for a gank, and letting your jungler know ahead of time, especially if he's on your side of the map, that information is going to be very crucial. Alright everyone, that's it for now. I hope you gained some value from this guide. I really didn't want to break down literally everything you could call in a game, because that's going to make it way harder than it needs to be. I really want you to focus on these specific points that we talked about, and becoming really good at communicating these aspects of your gameplay. So I'm going to be calling it that. Of course, if you have any questions related to the communication, feel free to ask me down below, and if not, I'll see you guys next time.